everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we're talking about Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Released in 2001, directed by Gary Truesdale and Kirk Wise. Screenplay by Tab Murphy from a story by Kirk Wise, Gary Truesdale, Joss Whedon, Bryce Zabel, Jackie Zabel, and Tab Murphy, with additional screenplay material by David Reynolds. And starring Michael J. Fox, James Garner, Claudia Christian, John Mahoney, Phil Morris, Don Novello. Who plays Kida? Where's she?
Cree Summer.
And Leonard Nimoy as the Atlantean King, which is pretty amazing. I wasn't expecting that. Corey Burton as Moliere. I think that's about Jacqueline Obradors. I may have butchered that last name, as Audrey. David Ogden Stiers as Mr. Harcourt. That's pretty cool. And Jim Varney, of course, as Cookie. I almost forgot Jim Varney, the late Jim Varney. This was, like I said, released in 2001, and I had never seen it. This was my first time watching it. So, Stu, did you see this in the theater, or do you have a recollection of seeing it for the first time?
I did not see it in the theater. However, I do have a recollection of seeing it for the first time. It was on, I want to say it was on ABC.
Oh, okay.
When it first came to network television.
Back when they used to do that.
Yes. Well, they still do it.
Well, it used to be like an event thing, though. It seems like for certain things, it was like, it's finally coming to ABC, an ABC movie. I think
the Batman just came to network television.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Couple of weeks ago. I love this movie.
Yeah.
I love it. It's one of my favorite animated films of all time. I've always been fascinated by Atlantis because it's not. I love mythology.
Sure.
And this is like mythology adjacent because no one knows if it's real or not, and there's a I don't know there's a sense of, okay, so some of this might actually be based on something.
Right. Yeah.
So and that's always fascinated me. With mythology, the people make things up to explain why life is the way it is. Atlantis was a little different. And that's always fascinated me. But this movie is wonderful. I love that it came out like right after the Disney Renaissance.
That's what I was going to ask, if it was technically a part of the Disney Renaissance, or if it was it was afterwards, and
it was
right at the end. Okay,
the last movie of the Disney Renaissance was Tarzan.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which was 99,
I believe. Yeah.
Yes, and
I did see that one in the theater.
I did not.
It's interesting because I didn't see the I guess if Tarzan was part of the Renaissance, that was the last Renaissance movie I saw. But I saw Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and then I didn't see Pocahontas, Hunchback, Mulan, Hercules. I didn't see any of those in the theater. And then for whatever reason, I saw Tarzan.
I saw it in the theater were Mulan and Hercules.
Yeah,
they came out one year apart.
Right.
Hercules was 96, Mulan was 97, I think. Maybe it was 98.
And my excuse was I was getting a little older.
Mm-hmm.
So like in 97, I was starting high school. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, maybe I just wasn't as, I remember really wanting to see Hunchback of Notre Dame, and for whatever reason, just never got to.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see that until I was an adult.
Same here. Actually, I just watched it for the first time, I think in 2020.
And it is fantastic.
Yeah, I really like that one a lot.
We'll definitely be reviewing that movie.
Okay. And so I don't, for Hercules and Mulan, I think maybe I was less interested because I was getting a little older, but at the same time, I did go see Tarzan, so I don't really know why I didn't see some of those. And I graduated high school in 2001, so I don't know if that's why I didn't see this. But I'm also a big Michael J. Fox fan, so I don't know why I didn't see this movie until now. I don't know.
You got too old for baby movies, man.
I guess so. Yeah. Although the very next year was Lilo and Stitch, and I did see that one, but
Yeah.
the girl I was dating at the time really, I guess, wanted to see it, and so I just saw it with her.
Yeah, like I said, I love this movie. I love the animation. I love the concept. It's a mixture of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and like it's kind of a precursor to Avatar, so it's like Dances with Wolves a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's an amalgamation of all these classic stories. That just makes, for me, it makes for a really interesting family animated movie. And I like the fact that it wasn't a musical and it wasn't goofy or silly.
Right.
It's a real like movie for real.
Yeah. I was actually impressed by that. And I remember actually thinking, like, when I was a kid, I like musicals now, but when I was a kid, I remember walking into The Lion King, and I guess I don't know if the trailer I saw didn't have any music in it or anything, but I remember thinking, I hope they don't sing. And I walked out of The Lion King loving it, and I was fine with it. But I remember being just maybe slightly disappointed that there was songs in it. I would have loved this as a kid.
Had you never seen a Disney movie before that?
Well, no, I had. But I just, for whatever reason, I just had hopes that The Lion King wasn't gonna be that. I don't know why, but but anyway. So this movie has no music in it. It's not a musical at all. There's no songs. No. And so I think I would have really enjoyed it as a kid. And I mean, I liked it now. I enjoyed it this time, or watching it for the first time now. I do really like the animation. There's a little bit of silliness in it with Mole. He's the silliest, kind of goofiest Disney-ish character.
Yeah, it's still marketed towards children.
Children, sure, yeah.
But it leans away from it's not talking down to them.
Right.
It's assuming that the children that are watching this are very intelligent.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like a lot of this, I'd have to go back and look, so I don't know how many are G versus PG. But I did notice a couple of funny, more kind of maybe adult-oriented jokes. Nothing like crazy. But I realized this movie's PG, not G. And so there were a couple little things, like the old woman whose name I don't remember, but the one that's she's smoking number one all the time, which is something you don't see in animated kids films nowadays,
especially Disney movies,
right? But she, when they're setting up their tents, and Milo goes, did you forget your pajamas? She goes, I sleep in the nude. I was like, that's not. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, no, I think it's a really fun adventure movie, and like you said, it's kind of got Dances with Wolves / Avatar, which I realize Avatar came out way later, but it's got that kind of story structure, I guess, whatever you want to call it, where the main character ends up siding with the group
natives.
that they're the natives. Yeah, thank you. But it works, whereas watching Avatar visually, it was great, but the story wise, I felt like we had seen it before. It was different enough in this movie that I felt like it worked.
Yeah. For me, I agree with you with Avatar. Although the second time that I watched it, I liked it much better than the first time. But I also saw it in IMAX 3D the second time, so that helped a little bit. Yeah. But I also think it's the main character. Jake Sully is so bland, and they try their hardest to make him interesting, but that he's kind of a boring protagonist.
Yeah,
and that's that's a sin in screenwriting. But there's so much about the movie that's so awesome, like the world building. Yeah, like the world building and stuff. So you can forgive it. So I think that this movie is not quite as good at the world building, but it has more interesting characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I and with our main character Milo, I love him because he's kind of the anti-Indiana Jones. Like, he's an explorer. He's really into the mythology and like the Shepherd's Journal. He's constantly just looking at the Shepherd's Journal, trying to to learn more about Atlantis and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's so awkward, and the group just at first kind of I wouldn't say they hate him, but they're just like they
they're
feel
not
like
even thinking about him.
They're not even thinking about him. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that one shot where like everybody's helping everybody up over this like one kind of rock face, and then he's the last one, and they all just turn and leave, and he's like, so,
Yeah.
yeah, he's basically just like tagging along essentially.
Mm-hmm. Well, they only need him to read the Shepherd's Journal. He's a linguist.
Yeah. He's the only one that can basically decipher it.
Right. So that's the only reason why he's there. Because later in the movie, it's revealed that they're not explorers; they're mercenaries.
Right.
And they're
treasure hunters, basically.
Yeah, they're treasure hunters. So they thought the power source was just some kind of big jewel, when actually it's their life source. It's what's keeping them alive down there for all these thousands of years. Which, watching it this time, I thought it was what's the word I'm looking for? When that is quote unquote revealed, I thought that was obvious from the beginning of the movie, but I guess not. So it didn't really hit me like it used to when that reveal came. I was like, that's the whole point. You guys are down there. Even Milo said, no, we should go down there and bring it back up, and we could power whatever for however long. So I thought that was the point anyway, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He does say that in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is we can go down there, find the heart of Atlantis,
mm-hmm.
and bring it to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that plan changed for Milo when he realized that there were still people in Atlantis, because even Helga says there was not supposed to be people down here. This changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Rourke says this changes
nothing.
But for Milo, I think it did change everything. But I don't think the movie maybe did a great job of showing that for Milo anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
But I feel like that's probably what it was. They probably thought Atlantis was going to be an abandoned city.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to find the heart of Atlantis and be able to bring it back. And once they got there and realized that there were people there,
mm-hmm.
then they couldn't do it. But even still, Milo still wants to find it. And it isn't until he realizes that it's their like life force that he's like, we can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if his plan was still to go down there, find the heart of Atlantis, and maybe be able to harness the power or take a part of it or something. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, now that you say it, I think he still wants to do it. Yeah, he's doing it. He's doing it for the sake of knowledge. That's just
right.
Who he is. He's like, we came all of this way. I may as well go see it through and check it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if I'm not gonna bring it back, I still want to find it and look at it and see what it does. Find out as much as I can about it. So, So yeah, you're right. I think for Milo that does change when they find out that there are people down there. But again, I agree. They should have shown that, done a little bit better job of showing that.
Yeah, I did like the reveal. So it wasn't like a total surprise when after he sees the heart of Atlantis and comes out of the water with Kida that
mm-hmm.
Rourke is there. He looks very menacing, and he's like, have a nice swim, and you find out, they're all bad guys.
Yeah.
That part isn't totally surprising, but I liked how that missing page, you find out Rourke has had that all along.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of cool. I wasn't expecting that. Again, it kind of makes sense since they had the journal first. They ripped that part out before they gave it to Milo.
Because he knew that if Milo knew about that he was going to put a stop to the whole thing.
Right. Which makes you wonder how the page, they can't read it. They just
plot
see
hole.
that it's
Definitely
Milo can read it, but how would they know to rip it out
if they can't read it?
If they can't read it, other than just maybe knowing that maybe Thaddeus Thatch, Milo's grandfather, told them that was the heart of Atlantis. So unless he said something about it being like the life force of the city or something, I don't know why they would tear it out and keep Milo from seeing it. If I don't know, that part is a question, I guess.
I'll have to, I have to watch it again. Yeah,
yeah.
Which I don't mind. I love the movie, but
I actually watched it about 1.5 times. The first time I watched it, I kept having to stop it, and I think I was starting it too late. I kept falling asleep, and so I made it about an hour into the movie, and I had about half an hour left, and I said, you know what? I just restarted it from the beginning and watched it all the way through this time, and so the end was new, but I had kind of rewatched the first hour, I guess.
Okay.
So the other thing I really like about this movie is the cast of characters.
Yes.
The crew. Number one, James Garner as Rourke is awesome.
Yeah.
He was kind of the perfect choice for that character. He's like a military, kind of big, gruff guy.
Mm-hmm.
Helga was an interesting character. When she shows up in the very beginning, it felt very kind of film noirish, where she's like in the shadows and she's this kind of almost femme fatale type character, you know?
Yeah.
That's really the only times it felt like that, but she was also an interesting character. She's kind of Rourke's right-hand person.
Mm-hmm.
Not much to her other than just being kind of like almost a henchman.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else, Audrey, Mole, of course, Sweet, Cookie, and what's the name of the guy that's the bomber? You know, he blows everything up. The flower shop guy.
I forgot.
Oh no! All right, hold on. Vinny. I thought I was gonna say Vinny, but I got it wrong. I thought I was gonna get it wrong. Vinny is played by Don Novello, who I pretty much immediately recognized his voice and looked him up to verify.
Yeah.
But he plays, or was kind of famous for playing Father Guido on Saturday Night Live, late 70s, early 80s, I think.
I remember him from Casper. He made a cameo in Casper, and the Casper's uncles turned his head backwards.
right.
So I remember watching this as a kid, hearing his voice. I was like, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I looked him up because I was like, does he actually have that accent? He was born in Ohio, so I think it's I think the voice is like the character he does, and he just does that voice for everything. I guess I don't know, but
kind of like Larry the Cable Guy. Larry the Cable Guy just doesn't talk like that.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yep. I think it's the same type of thing. So, but I really liked Vinny a lot. I thought he was actually great.
Yeah.
But and then again, Michael J. Fox, I think, does a fantastic job in this.
I love the. That he plays a prank on Milo. Vinny plays a prank on Milo. He's drinking some water.
Right.
Yeah, Milo is drinking some water. He's like, "No, did you just drink that?" He's like, "Yeah, that's nitroglycerin." He said, "Don't move, don't breathe, don't do anything except pray."
And at first I thought, like, when that happened, I was like, is he being serious? And then Mole comes up and scares him, and they laugh it off and walk away. And then he even like pokes fun of him later for it because they need some charges or something. He's like, "Well, if we had some nitroglyceride, eh, Milo?" Or nitroglycerin, yeah, eh, Milo. Another interesting character that I wasn't really expecting in this movie was Cookie, played by Jim Varney.
Jim Varney, yeah.
And this was actually Jim Varney's last role. Apparently, he actually died while the film was in production.
Yeah.
So he didn't get to see his final role, but it was nice hearing Jim Varney's voice, even if it's kind of an interesting character, the cook that nobody likes his food really, and but and he's just kind of quirky.
And the 4 basic food groups.
Yeah, that was good. Beans, bacon, whiskey and lard.
I do like this cast of characters, but there's so many that some of them feel just like archetypes.
Yeah.
Whereas others are more fleshed out. So like Mole is an archetype. I like Mole,
Right.
but
Yeah.
he's just an archetype. Whereas Audrey is a bit more fleshed out.
Yeah, I agree. And even Sweet, I think, is a little bit more fleshed out. The Doctor, I think I really like Sweet in this movie a lot too. There were a couple of moments where I actually laughed out loud, and one of them, it was a Michael J. Fox line, but he's talking to Sweet. It's when he first meets Sweet, and
he's giving them the medical exam.
Yeah, he's kind of giving them a little medical exam, and then he holds up these like really large containers, and he goes, "I need you to fill these up." And Michael J. Fox goes,
like,
with what?
That definitely made me laugh out loud.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, for sure.
And then another time, it's also involved Sweet, but it was Audrey that made me laugh. Because he's got this big, I think it happens during the medical exam. He's got like this big saw. And he's like, you can cut through a femur with this in 28 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And so then at the end of the movie, she's using it to try to saw through a chain. And she's having a hard time. She goes, "I thought you said this could cut through a femur in 28 seconds. And he's like, "Just keeps on."
Who else? Keita. I love
Keita.
Keita is the forgotten Disney princess.
Yeah, I was actually... Yeah. So I looked at IMDb trivia, and the woman that plays Keita, Cree Summers, thank you. She said, I think she was quoted as saying she considers her a Disney princess. Even though she's
absolutely a Disney princess.
Yeah, she is. I agree. And she was like, even though nobody thinks to include her in any of like the Disney princess lineup,
it's because she's not the star.
Right.
She's the co-stars, but she's not the star. Where Cinderella was the star of Cinderella. Snow White was the star of Snow White.
Right.
Because she's still a primary character, but she's not the lead.
And she doesn't show up until later, like halfway through the movie or something. Yeah, exactly. Even though she's in the beginning as a little girl, but yeah, she doesn't really show up till about halfway through the movies. Whereas, because like Jasmine is considered a Disney princess, and she's not necessarily the main character, but she's in that whole entire movie, and she's the love interest and all that. Right. So yeah, it's interesting that Keita is kind of forgotten about. Because I agree. I think she belongs in that lineup.
I 100% agree.
And she is an actual princess because she's the daughter of the king of Atlantis, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Played by Leonard Nimoy.
And she's also, I guess she's kind of like a shaman, because she's like the Atlantean spiritual leader.
Right.
She is a very unique, interesting character because she's kind of the, I wouldn't say like the Messiah of the movie, but she's Keita herself is sacred. And I like the idea of that. But not only is she sacred, she's very intelligent. She's well versed in many languages. I mean, as all of them are. She's tough, and we also get to see how she has changed over the last 8,000 years. Because her father says, 1,000 years ago, you would have thought, he said something, he like slaughtered him or something. But now she's seeking help from these outsiders to help her people continue to survive, because they've been living on scraps for the last couple thousand years. So I love her motivation, and she goes through an off-screen change that we don't see, but it's still very evident.
And then how do you feel about her? This was something I wasn't expecting either, is she comes into contact with the crystal, the life force crystal or whatever, and basically like bonds with it, and essentially becomes like a god almost. It's what she kind of looks like. That's another thing. Keita, she shows up late and then she goes away for part of the movie because she's this being that they put into a cage.
She basically turns into Nora Freeze.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way of putting it. I wasn't expecting that. And that whole scene where she kind of absorbs the crystal's power and becomes this like entity felt like a third act moment to me. And I remember watching the movie going, is this the end? And I hit like pause and it said I still had like 35 minutes left in the movie. I said, oh. I was like, this is just, it felt like a kind of a big final act kind of moment, even though there wasn't like a big battle scene or anything yet. It just felt like a big moment. And then
when that happened, that was like the bridge between the second act.
Yeah,
and
second act going into the third act. Yeah. And she willingly goes into that that cage, whatever. It's like a metal, like coffin almost, kind of, you know.
Well, there's a reason for that. So the crystal used her to protect itself, just like it did her mother.
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't her walking into the cage or whatever. It was the crystal. The crystal had inhabited her, and it was going in there through her body.
Oh, okay, I get you.
Yeah.
And then that's really what sets up the third act, is Rourke and the crew are going to take it, and Milo at least gets through to some of them and makes them realize that what they're doing is wrong. And but Rourke and Helga are like, whatever, and they take Kida and leave and blow up the bridge. But and then that's when we get like the big final act battle scene, because Milo shows all the Atlanteans how to turn on their vehicles, basically.
Yes, I do want to talk about that real quick. I love the like technology of Atlantis, even though it's limited. But we do see a lot of it in the beginning of the movie. I love the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
You get to see like what Atlantis used to be, like this massive advanced civilization. They had electricity, they had the power of flight. Like they were so far beyond, it almost looked like they was on another planet.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. It really did.
Yeah.
I didn't take very many notes. One of them we already talked about, which is the "with what" line. But my first note was in the beginning, because we don't know anything yet. We just see Atlantis and we see the big wave coming. And then Kida's mom goes into the light and looks up and is like looking into the deadlights, like from It.
Yeah.
And I wrote down, I was like, is this like an alien story? Are aliens a part of this? Because that's what it looked like to me. It looked like an alien abduction. You know, she's like getting pulled up into the light. So it was cool to find out, you know, that wasn't the case. It was this crystal and all that stuff. But I thought, you know, but yeah, Atlantis looks like almost an alien civilization. And then on top of that, I thought there were actually going to be aliens that were a part of this story.
Yeah, but the thing I like about Atlantis is that I don't know this for sure, but it looks like an amalgamation of different civilizations. Like it looks Mayan, but it looks African, and it looks futuristic. Like it's a different blend of civilizations that we know today. And I think their thinking was some of the things that we recognize and are familiar with in the modern world come from Atlantis.
Yeah, and I can see that.
Even though Atlantis sunk into the sea, maybe one or two things slipped through the cracks, and that's how we have some of the things that we have today because of that.
Yeah.
So that's just a theory. I could be wrong, but
yeah, no, and I think that makes sense to me. I was going to say, I would have to think that it would be on purpose that they did that kind of amalgamation of cultures for Atlantis, rather than just making it look, you know, like one thing, or, you know, it makes a lot of sense to me. And then the idea that some of the cultures that we recognize came from this, I mean, that just makes sense to me. So I like that's will be my headcanon anyway.
But I love those. I love those the whatever the vehicles that they're riding on. They look like sharks. Like I love how they're not really gliding. They're kind of swimming through the air.
Right, yeah. I have mentioned before that I'm not a huge fan of 2D movies that use these 3D animated elements.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes it looks too different and it kind of takes me out of it.
Mm-hmm.
This movie has a lot of that, but they do a pretty good job of making those 3D or the computer animated elements look like they belong in the movie.
Yes.
You can still tell occasionally, but like in the very beginning, when you see those ships that they're flying
mm-hmm.
as the waves coming and everything, you can tell those are computer animated, but it looks good and it fits within the movie pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. The best of it of that kind of 3D animation is the Leviathan.
Yeah.
I love the Leviathan. I love everything about it. Just the concept of it being a giant metal lobster.
Yeah, right.
Like that is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it guards the gates of Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
It's so mythic and epic. Like it is everything. Like that's the kind of nerdy fantasy stuff that's in my head.
Right.
I love it.
I like too how when Milo is talking about the Leviathan, he says that it's most likely a statue or a sculpture, that has scared off people in the past. But they're they're not going to be scared of that. And then we find out that it's like this actual creature
thing.
and then Milo finds out that it's a machine.
It's a machine.
Yeah, which I thought was really...
He sees the heat in the eye. And oh, man.
I thought that was brilliant. Oh, the other thing I liked about, right before they see the Leviathan, or they encounter the Leviathan, they get to the area where the Leviathan is like, quote unquote, sleeping.
Yeah.
And there's just ships lining the bottom of the ocean.
Graveyard of ships.
So many explorers were trying to find Atlantis and had gotten this far, and then the Leviathan destroyed them, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, I did too. It just shows you, again, the history and the world building, while not quite as big as Avatar, but what is,
sure, yeah.
Avatar is a huge movie that took 10 years to make, but
right.
But like for what this movie is, a lot of thought went into this world, and I appreciate the amount of detail that they put into this movie.
I really like the animation style as well. It's not kind of the characters with the very rounded features like we kind of have seen in Disney movies and everything.
It's a little more
lot
angular.
of it's very angular, kind of sharp edges and everything. And I think it looks really good.
Yeah, the animation for this movie is instantly recognizable. Whereas most Disney movies, you could kind of interchange them a little bit.
Right.
I would say that this, Aladdin, Mulan, and Hercules are probably like the most instantly recognizable type of animation. Because, like, take Tarzan, for instance. Tarzan, the animation for Tarzan is very similar to Beauty and the Beast. You can you could switch out Jane and Belle.
Right.
and they look like they both look, as far as the animation, they look the same.
Right.
But this is very unique, and I love when Disney does that. They especially with like period pieces and things that take place in certain parts of the world. That's one of my favorite things about Hercules. It looks like Greek drawings on a vase. And the same thing with Mulan. It looks like it came from an ancient Chinese dynasty.
Right.
So the Renaissance and even post-Renaissance, this era of animated films and for Disney, they really went all in when it came to the look of of their movies. And this, this is no different. This is a beautiful movie. If nothing else, it's nice to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
There's one thing that I noticed that you wouldn't know unless you had watched the movie a few times. The music in this movie echoes some of the melodies from the main song that accompanies this movie. The song that plays at the end at the credits where the dream takes you. Yeah. The score echoes the melodies of that song, and I hadn't noticed that until I watched it this last time. I've seen this movie like 15 times, probably.
Right, sure, yeah.
But I hadn't noticed that until this last watch, and I was like, oh, okay, that was nice.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I obviously didn't notice that since that,
right. You wouldn't know that until you get to the end of the movie and then watch the movie.
And then you got to rewatch it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I did notice the score, and I really liked the score, especially. Yes. I think it's the moment where Kida, is merging with the crystal. I think the music in that scene is really good. And then the final scene, after the whole fight with Rourke and all that, I think the music in that is really good too.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention earlier, and I forgot. When Kida is when the crystal is inhabiting Kida, and she looks back at Milo and says, "No, don't worry, everything's gonna be all right."
Mm-hmm.
That audio was put on another shot for the trailer. It's after she's been inhabited by the crystal and she opens her eyes. That shot with that line of dialogue in the trailer gave me chills as a kid. I gotta find it for you. I'm gonna send you the link. Like that I remember watching this trailer, and that shot got me excited for the movie. I was like, this is different. I need to see this.
That's really cool. I don't recall seeing this trailer. I'm sure I did, but
I remember the trailer being very good.
One of the notes I wrote, Rourke is just a evil person. So he obviously does not care about the Atlanteans. He doesn't care about Milo. Doesn't even care about the rest of his crew when they decide to stay. He and Helga leave. And then as he and Helga are kind of like in a hot air balloon type device rising through the volcano, they realize they're too heavy, and he tells her to lighten the load. So she's throwing stuff kind of overboard. And then they're still too heavy. And she's like, well, that's everything unless one of us jumps. And he's like, ladies first. And he basically just throws her out, and she kind of catches herself and is able to come back in, and they fight a little bit, but he still ends up pushing her out, and she falls pretty far. And I thought, dang, he just straight up murdered her. But then we see a shot of her later, and she's still alive, and that was my note. I was like, how did she survive that fall? And then I actually don't remember what happens to her. Is she just in the volcano? Does she die in the volcano, or?
I think she dies in the volcano.
Yeah, okay. So she does end up dying. So they could have had her die on that fall, but maybe it was like a Disney thing. They needed
to keep her alive for that moment so she could shoot the hot air balloon.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yep.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about the whole scene with Rourke getting cut and being like infused with the crystal energy, I guess, and becoming that thing?
From a story standpoint, doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
But man, is it cool. I remember watching that as a little kid. I was like, that looks awesome. But no, it doesn't make much sense. They don't really explain why that is happening to him. I personally don't care. It just looks cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. I don't really understand why it happened, but I kind of like that it happened because it is a really cool moment. And I think at one point Milo thinks he's dead because of it, and then you see the hand come into frame, and so that was pretty awesome. I did notice right before he turns or gets infected with that stuff or whatever, there's a shot of him. He's drawn weird. It's like his head is almost too big, and he's got like these he's kind of got exaggerated features anyway, but he's got a really exaggerated feature. And it's right before he gets infused with that thing. And I just remember thinking the animation, I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know if it was, I don't know. But I just remember thinking Rourke looked kind of funky in that scene.
I don't
recall it. Yeah.
No. I do kind of like the reveal that the reason that they're down there is because of the king. He was like, I got too full of myself and tried to turn the crystal into a weapon, and the crystal didn't like that. So
right.
It sank us into the bottom of the sea,
but kept us alive. Yeah,
it kept them alive, but it was like it was protecting itself.
Right.
It didn't want to be used as a weapon, and I like how he kind of explained it. Again, it reminded me of Avatar with the tree. He was saying like it started out as a source of power, but as time went along, and the people kept dying and being born or whatever, it kind of got a consciousness of its own and became sentient. Now it's alive, and that's how it is keeping everyone alive. So it works in tandem with the people. It doesn't exist without them, and they can't exist without it.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
One last thing that you could probably kind of tell just based off character designs, but it wasn't something that I had really thought about, and so wasn't expecting, was that this movie is a period piece. It takes place in like 1914 or something, which I thought was really cool.
It's got a steampunk aspect to it, which I love. I'm a big fan of steampunk. But yeah, it's definitely again that just adds to the aesthetic. It's taken an aesthetic of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but telling the story of Dances with Wolves.
Right.
And it's a really good blend.
One last thing, another thing that I thought was going to happen that didn't was, since the whole crew betrayed Milo, I thought Whitmore was also going to be kind of like the main bad guy. I thought Whitmore was going to be revealed as behind it all, that he was also betraying Milo and Thaddeus, I guess. But then they get to the very kind of last scene, and they're all kind of coming up with a story. Okay, what happened to Helga and Earl? I like what they said about Rourke, and it's Cookie that's like, well, he got transmortified or whatever, transmortified and blown up into a zillion pieces. And they're like, no. He's like, oh yeah, I mean, he's missing. So it was cool to see that Whitmore didn't really know that was going to happen, and he was a good guy all along.
Yeah.
And then another thing I really liked is that Milo stays.
Yes.
I thought that was cool. Rather than coming back with everybody, Milo stays in Atlantis, which I thought was really perfect for Milo.
I mean, he had nothing to go
back
home
to. Yeah, no.
So it made sense.
And like I said, he's kind of he's a lovable. He's one of those people who's like super smart, but also dumb. You know what I mean? He obviously is very socially awkward, and it's difficult for him to get along or to fit in with people. And so it's just Atlantis is kind of where he belonged. And I think it made sense. It would have not felt right, I think, if he had left and come back.
Yeah. This is I love this movie. Disney has been remaking their animated films, most of which action. Most of which are not great. There's been
a couple of good ones, but yeah, for the most part,
there's 2, maybe 3 that are actually good.
Which ones are those in your opinion?
Jungle Book, Little Mermaid.
That might be it.
That might be it. Because I like Aladdin, but when Will Smith is not on screen, I kind of don't care.
Gotcha. I have not seen Little Mermaid, so I can't comment on that one yet. But
it's pretty good.
I actually didn't like The Jungle Book, but I really liked Aladdin. I thought Aladdin was actually surprisingly good. I've tried to watch Lion King, couldn't get through it. Need to try to finish it.
So Lion King, I've had a change of heart on Lion King. When it first came out, I liked it. Now, not so much. I tried watching it one day. I was like, this ain't it, Chief. Right. And it's not that it's bad. They don't do enough different. It's shot for shot. It's like Psycho.
Right.
It is shot for shot the same movie. The only thing that they change are the hyenas. That's it. Everything else is almost exactly the same.
And I saw something online that, and I didn't really watch much of it. I really need to sit down and try to watch the whole thing. I think I watched the first 20 or 30 minutes. I remember meeting Timon and Pumbaa. One of the things I saw online that made a lot of sense to me was it's like they tried to go almost a little too realistic with it too, to the point where you can't see any facial expressions in the animals, and so
I've never agreed with that. Even now,
really?
I've never agreed because people didn't complain about that when the Jungle Book came out. They only complained about it
with
the Lion King. They never said anything like that when the Jungle Book came out.
Well, like I said, I didn't like the Jungle Book either. So
I like the Jungle Book, man.
I've only seen it the one time. I maybe will have to rewatch it, but I walked out of that movie. I didn't like it at all. But anyway, let's go into a rating. Let's rate Atlantis. What would you give Atlantis: The Lost Empire?
I'm gonna give it a very strong 4 out of 5 crystals.
Yeah, I was originally kind of thinking 3.5, but the more we talked about it, I think I'm leaning more towards a 4 as well. It's a strong animated movie, and it's a fun adventure story. It's got great performances. I agree with you. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 as well.
Now, see, there are. I'm in the minority. There are two types of people. There are Atlantis people, and there are Treasure Planet people. Most people are Treasure Planet people because Treasure Planet is a fun movie.
Yeah.
This is not that type of movie, and I think that's why I like it. I appreciate it for not being that type of movie.
Right. Yeah, you've mentioned that before, and you said that you think I will be a Treasure Planet person. So I've not seen that movie either. So we'll have to talk about that movie eventually, but we'll see, because I like this one, so we'll see which one I like more. So before we kind of wrap things up, I just wanted to announce that starting next week, we are going to begin our Harry Potter marathon. We already did Harry Potter. We already did Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, so we will be starting with Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Yes.
We're going to do Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and then I think Goblet of Fire before taking a tiny break to do a Halloween episode.
Yes.
And then we will return with Harry Potter and finish it up with Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and then the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2.
Yes.
So we're just going to take a break from superhero movies and other stuff for right now and just have a Harry Potter marathon. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you come with us on the ride.
Yeah.
And watch some Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, the reason we're doing that is because it takes us forever to get through a franchise, and because we're excited to talk about these movies. We want to just blow through them, and we know you guys love them too, so we don't want to make you have to wait 3 years for us to get to Prisoner of Azkaban.
Right.
So we're just gonna blow through these really quick because I'm really excited to review these movies. This will be my first time reviewing these movies. So I'm really, really excited. I know you guys love these movies. You've been asking for them in reviews in the comments. So we delivering on that. So we're definitely looking forward to that.
And let us know if you like the idea of a marathon like this, because if you do, there's a couple other franchises that we could do this with. Some franchises we've already done most of them. Like I know we still have the Dark Knight Rises to do, but we talked about doing the Fast and Furious franchise. We could just do all of those in a row if people like that, or the Mission Impossible franchise, stuff like that. We could have marathons if you like that idea, but let us know. We would love to hear your comments on that. So speaking of that, let us also know how you feel about Atlantis: The Lost Empire. You can let us know at cinemaheroes.com, or you can let us know on Instagram or Twitter. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below what you think about the idea of marathons, and give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I think that about wraps up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.